Hello, everyone. Welcome to this inaugural session of Noblestories. We appreciate you coming. This is a great crowd. My name is Mike Corbett. I'm treasurer of the Noblesville Preservation Alliance, which is a sponsor of this series. And the whole idea behind this is to give people in the community a sense of our heritage and where we've been. The vision of it is that by bringing storytellers in to tell us a little bit about some specific events that have happened in our past, we'll get a little bit of a better appreciation for how we got to where we are. The Preservation Alliance is a sponsor of this, but so is Hamilton County Television. And I want to thank my friend Jim Wofford, who is doing this at no charge. Jim's got a huge heart for this community, and he is doing a video of this entire thing, and it will be posted on social media, on YouTube and so forth, so that you can watch it in the future if you'd like. There is a slideshow that's going to be associated with it, and the slideshow will be on the video. So if you want to go back and watch it, if you can't see the slides very well right now, you'll be able to go back and watch it on the internet, and you'll be able to see all the slides as they go by. I believe that Alice mentioned that there is water in the back. You're welcome to it. There's no charge for the water. We do remind you, however, that both the Preservation Alliance and Logan Street Sanctuary are nonprofits. We're totally staffed and run by volunteers. So nobody gets paid in this deal. We're really just, we try and collect a little bit of money so that they can keep the air conditioner going and the heat in the winter. And with the Preservation Alliance, most of our funding goes toward our facade grants that we award to people. We give people money to help them fix up their homes because we want to keep our community looking nice. So, welcome. You see Alice back there. She's got the little bucket. So, sure. Please feel free to donate. We'd appreciate that. So, let's go ahead and get started with this series. The first series here, the theme is high school days in Noblesville back in the 1960s. And we have with us today Sandy Stewart and Dottie Young, and they are going to share some of their memories. We'll let them talk, and at some point we're probably going to have to cut them off because I know for a fact that they can talk forever. So we would like to also have you ask questions or express your comments as well. But we'll let them go on for a while. We'll show some slides and so forth, and then at a certain point we might come out into the audience with a microphone and get some of your comments as well. But let's go ahead and get started. Sandy and Dottie, take it away.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is Dottie and I did not know we were not getting paid today. So this will be short. Yeah. Both of us serve on the Noblestories committee and have been very excited about bringing some of the wisdom of the elders of our community. We were hoping it was going to be people in their 80s and 90s, and we're working on some of those stories, but your warm-up act is just a couple of youngsters in their 70s. And we are going to definitely talk a lot about high school. Dottie is the unofficial high school historian, and as well as being an excellent Hamilton County historian. But our purpose is to get...
And I'm on the cemetery board.
Cemetery board. So I'm not going to even make a joke about that. It's too close to home.
Oh, yeah.
But our purpose is not just talking about high school, even though most of the members of the class of '64 are here today. But we both have a unique perspective of Noblesville. We both neither of us were born in Noblesville.
I was born in Noblesville.
You were born in Noblesville?
At the hospital. There was only one hospital in the county.
Mike was born there too.
Yeah.
But I was born in Virginia and came here on the Hillbilly Highway in 1952. My father was a coal miner and we came up for the factory. Dottie's high school was, she went to another school.
I went to Wayne Township and we didn't have a high school.
So our overview is kind of Noblesville as it's changed through the years and from this tiny little town to this dynamic city that it is now. So take it away, Dottie.
That Hillbilly Highway, I remember when we were kids, we would say, in Pennington Gap, yes, they teach the 3 R's, reading, writing, and the road to Noblesville. And I also will say that the kids from Carmel and other cities around Hamilton County would say, "Why do you have a southern accent?" And I'm sure it was the people from Lee County, Virginia, that brought their accent with them and changed our way of speaking.
Well, I will say something about the accents. I noticed when I went to first grade, I was 5 when we came, and in my first grade class, I noticed that people with Southern accents were treated differently. And I very consciously, at that young, manipulative age, made the decision to lose the accent. So I began to emulate the northern people. So that's something to keep in mind. You know, we're all about immigrants now. We're talking a lot about what it feels like. We only came from another state, but it was different.
Yeah, my mother used to tell me about this lady that lived in the Clarksville community out in Wayne Township, and her son had married a woman from Kentucky, and they got a divorce. And she said, he should have known better. He should have married a person from America. Seriously.
Yeah, I believe it.
Well, I wanted to say that I'll start with this little story. I had a friend, Verdon Pausel, and she was in her 90s when she passed away, and she was in her 90s when we became pretty good friends. And her father was, I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Madge, and he was the elevator operator at the mill and was the first one to put an elevator in the courthouse, and they had said it couldn't be done, and he put the elevator in. But anyhow, I would ask her about things in her past and about Noblesville and so forth, and she would say, well, I'll tell you, if you live long enough, you can say it any way you want it to be because there's nobody left to dispute your word.
And that's what we plan to do today.
Exactly. Well, we don't want this all to be about high school, but I did bring the history, kind of the history of our class of 1964, a shortened version that I wrote for the paper, and I think it kind of puts the time in perspective, because you know, if we think from now, we can't remember all that went on at that time. But anyhow, our class motto was, we're the class of they all adore, we're the class of 64.
Marcia Haymaker, stand up, please. Come up and model. Marcia has the class motto on her t-shirt.
Oh, yes. I guess she doesn't want to model it. I think that was from our 20th reunion.
I think so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that shirt was from our 20th reunion.
I don't remember. I'm just a kid.
Mine doesn't. But anyhow, most of us were born about 1946, so we were the first of the baby boomers. And here in town, the schools were Federal Hill, Connor School, First Ward, Second Ward, Third Ward, and also Durban. We could choose to go to Noblesville, LaPel, or Walnut Grove, and Fall Creek Township, and they could choose to go. He went to Durban and Fall Creek. You could choose to go to Fortville or Noblesville. Or Fishers. But my family were always Noblesville people, so my identification was with Noblesville. That was the town. If you were going in town, you were going to Noblesville. Now, if you were going in the city, you were going to Indianapolis. And I forget we would go to Anderson. We were not big Anderson people, but I was always amazed that people then and now still say Anderson. It never gets to be the Anderson. So anyhow, our freshman year, we watched the Kennedy-Nixon debates, and Kennedy was elected. And we built a homecoming float at one of our classmates, Susan Harris. Her father was a doctor. And I think it was Athens were going to win because we were playing a game against a team who had Athens, the Athenians. We went to Hudson's Drugstore, which was downtown, kind of where the Hamilton was. And my favorite thing there, that was like a Hollywood movie set, because all the teenagers were in there after school, and we were having sodas and milkshakes, and it was just the neatest place. You could get a black and white sundae for 25 cents. We'd go to the Diana Theater and the M&M Bowling Alley. And we had, at that time, we still had canteen on Wednesday nights. That was kind of a holdover from World War II. I don't know, I know that older classes than us had that, but canteen would be on Wednesday nights and after ball games. You would have, they would have Coke available, Coca-Cola, that is, and music. And we would just dance and have a great time with all our friends and then go home. And we always had, Friday nights were for the Diana Theater. If you drove a car, you probably went to the drive-in or somewhere else, but most of us in the younger classes would go to the Diana and just hang out and get hit in the head with M&Ms and whatever else was flying around there. The M&M Bowling Alley, I think it was finally done in when they built the Stardust Bowling Alley because it had automatic pin setters. And the M&M did not. One of our classmates, Irvin Carroll, who didn't graduate with us because he quit school, he was missing a front tooth because one of the pins hit him, you know, as it flew up, and that's how he lost his tooth. It was on Connor Street, kind of where that little strip mall is with the green canopies. It was in that area. And in high school, we would walk over there from PE class to learn to bowl, which was fun.
Some people have said that it's in the area where the gas station is now, and some people think it's that building with the entrance. But never really sure which one of them.
I never am either.
Just west of Noble Street.
Yeah, I think so. Although there was another building there where that strip was, but there used to be like a creek there, or a drainage ditch.
Mike probably knows.
It's in that green building.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Anyhow, we always had, in the fall, there was always a fall wind-up dance, and they would choose Mr. Football. That was always a fun thing to do. And we always had it at no, we didn't have it at the Forest Park Inn. We had it at the O.V. Winks building at the fairgrounds. And everybody would bring their, if you were decorating, you'd bring your card tables and decorate it, and we would transform it into this beautiful space. And back in those days, we had live bands. So, and they were not rock and roll bands; they were more swing music. But it was really nice. That year, we also beat Sheridan in the basketball sectional at the Carmel Gym in a double overtime game. And that's the night we had the huge snow blizzard, and we got to stay in the gym all night because the buses couldn't get us back to school. And it was a ball. We had so much fun. I think the roads opened about 4 in the morning, and then if you were on the fan bus, which I was, it brought you back to Noblesville, and I had to stay with a friend because I couldn't get back out to Clarksville. Then we got to clean up. There was a neat setup for proms. All the proms now are in these fancy halls and so forth, but ours was in the gym. And the teachers had organized it so well and had a neat setup. The freshmen would do the cleanup. The sophomores would serve hors d'oeuvres and drinks and so forth. The juniors would put the prom together, and the seniors were the ones that got to enjoy it. So, and it did look like a beautiful, ours was Strangers in Paradise, and it was really beautiful. We had a little pond and a bridge and all kinds of stuff.
I think our prom was the last one that was allowed to have running water.
Really?
I can't think why that would be.
Nothing happened.
Yeah.
But they just decided they're not.
I know my sister's in 1956 was like an Italian thing, and they had the wine bottles with candles on it, and red and white checkered tablecloths, and believe it or not, or most of you might know, people used to go just to watch the prom. They'd sit in the stands and watch it as it went on, and come to see how it looked, and it was a big deal. It's a really big deal. then our sophomore year, we got to order class rings and served refreshments at the prom. And we had the Berlin Wall go up. And we still had fun, though. We liked to hang out at Ramsey's and Bill's Drive-In. And then later on, Jim Dandy, when we were seniors. And in the junior year, we got to be in charge of canteen. Now, Mr. Nakar was the person in charge of that. And he didn't like girls very much. I wanted to take drafting. He taught drafting, but I was a girl, so they would not let me take drafting. And I was afraid of him. But I know Mike Stewart and all the boys would practice his signature because it was very unique. But that was a hall pass, exactly. That's right. But it was fun to work at the canteen and we sold candy and pop and stuff at lunch and at the dances to make money to fund our prom, which was a neat thing. And that year, that junior year, we won the sectional at Carmel again and then the regional at Kokomo, and we lost to South Bend in the semi-state at Fort Wayne. So, anyhow, then senior year, we got to wear cords and make them. And I'm glad they're still doing it now. It's different than we did, but they're still doing it. At the homecoming parade, the young girls will decorate white jeans and wear them. But, you know, some of us, like you, I'm sure, and I know I did, had, like, jobs, you know, making cords for people.
Like $10 for doing the cord?
I got 20.
Oh, well. But you're not getting paid today.
No, that's true.
Sandy,
Huh?
you painted mine.
Did I? How'd I do?
Mine too, Sandy.
How much did you pay me?
I don't know that I did. Maybe $10. I don't remember.
That's what I thought.
We had a exchange student from New Zealand, too, which she was interesting. Judy Wright was her name, and she's a doctor now. She was going to try to come to our 50th reunion, but couldn't make it. So, and then we won the basketball sectional for the 4th year in a row, beating Tipton, and that was a wonderful thing because they were supposed to have won the state. They did all these news things on them, and we creamed them. Yeah. Good one. So, and that year, John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and that changed life for all of us. And at that moment, I know that we all remember when Mr. Dellinger went outside in the rain and put the flag at half staff. And it was
And cried when he came into our classroom to tell us.
Yeah, it was crushing. And then we got to spend 3 days at home, which wasn't a pleasure because I think I would have really liked to have been with classmates, you know, to discuss it and so forth. Then in February that year, Ed Sullivan introduced the Beatles to us on television. And the class of '65 did Stairway to the Sea for their prom, which we were treated to. So I just wanted to give you a little perspective about the times.
I attended the Beatles. I think it might have been one of their first concerts in America. They were at the state fairgrounds, and I saw nothing and heard nothing because I was totally surrounded by screaming girls. I think it was right after. I think I was already in college, but anyway, you heard absolutely just a roar of screams.
No, it was in the summer right after we graduated because I didn't get to go. I had to choose between going on a vacation with Annie Owen and her family or going to see the Beatles. Vernon went to see the Beatles, my husband, and we still have his tickets.
I didn't see you there.
What'd you say?
I said I didn't see him there.
Yeah, it was in August.
I was timing it because I remembered who my date was, and it wasn't somebody from high school.
Okay.
Do you want to run through a few photos? We've got some photos.
Oh, okay.
Jim, why don't you go ahead?
Go.
That's First Ward School, where I attended First Ward from 2nd through 6th grade, and my husband Mike also attended probably from 1st through 6th. And afterwards, there's a picture up here. It's an artist rendering of First Ward, and there are two class pictures, two of the classes that we were in together. So you can see what we looked like when we were in second grade.
And this was located where North Elementary is?
Uh-huh. There was the old school, and they had two buildings that we called portables. I think they were maybe left over from something to do with the war. They were structures because the building was too small for the growing town at that point.
Well, that's downtown way before us, but most of those buildings are still there. There was a terrible fire down towards Sid's, and so the building that's beside Sid's is like only 2 stories tall, not 3 like the rest of them. But the rest of those buildings are still there.
Alexander's.
And that used to be the grocery store,
Yeah.
Regal grocery store.
Yeah,
It is Alexander's now. Potter's Bridge. Wait, Stanton, what's the story your parents would talk about Potter's Bridge to your grandmother?
There was a church just at the corner of 206 and Cumberland on the southeast corner, a little Lutheran church. They're just across the road from our big Lutheran church now. And the men or the boys out there would race their horse and buggies, like they do cars now. And so my grandfather and grandmother, my grandfather Kaiser, my future grandmother, his future wife, my grandmother, they were drag racing through the bridge from the south end to the north end, and the 2 buggies, the wheels collided and threw my grandmother out of the buggy, and she broke her arm. But I guess the romance survived the incident.
He was caring.
Yes.
That's a later. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. That's a later picture because it was open. You could drive your car across it when we were kids.
It's still safe enough to.
That's Sandy as a flower child. I'm a 60s hippie. So. And that is our house where Mike and I still currently live, the one behind the horse. We've stabled the horse, and the house has changed a little bit since that time. But actually the only difference is then it was all wood, and somebody thought it would be a good idea at some point to put brick on the bottom and stucco on the top. And the good idea was to make the porch go all the way across the front. So, but it's still there.
Sid's. Howdy, bub. I love that. I love that photograph.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably still the same shuffleboard
Is
thing.
it still in the same place,
Yes.
or is it up front?
Yes.
It is.
It's still right there.
Still looks exactly like that.
Yes, it does. Oh, that's Sherry Ott and I. Before the Santa Claus house, sometimes they would have Santa Claus in different places, and this was at the corner drugstore. And so Sherry and I were sitting on Santa's lap, and there's Jim LeCount and Jim Galloway early photo bombing us. What? Okay. This is cheerleaders. Christy, I know you're here, is in this picture. This is our junior year, and so it always went 3 cheerleaders one year, 2 from a different class the next year. So there were 2 of us that were in the junior class, and then the next year, it just went back and forth. And this was at the first cheerleading camp that any of us went to. It was up in Syracuse, Indiana, at the Smith Wallbridge cheerleading camp. And that was our group for senior year. We had a good time. That changed the style of cheerleading, because before it had been more, I don't know, not so disciplined. And they went to straight arm and having a captain that would say, "Okay." And I had a false front tooth, and I said, "Okay," and it flipped out on my arm. Pretty embarrassing. It's one of the homecoming, that is a homecoming poster. We used to have, they still have programs that are really nice. And, just senior cords, if anybody, I didn't finish mine on the back, but that's my senior cords. homecoming queen. It's Jim DeShiel.
Can I tell a senior court story?
Sure.
On Jenny Spears. You remember Jenny Spears? She had a big green dragon on from the waist down to the bottom in the back, and above it it says "Mine's a dragon." I will never forget those.
You know, she still has she goes for those license plates that say something, and hers says, "I'm a mess." No. Oh, Elaine, you're right. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, if you saw her lately, that's scary.
Yeah. This is the pictures from the homecoming parade in 1963, fall of 1963. Fall wind-up. Terry McKinnon, I think, was the king that year. Basketball team. And so the sad thing about this is, you know, as you get older, we lose a lot of people. And out of that basketball team, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys that are gone. And Patty Middleton is the little girl on the far right, and she's still living, but she was in a terrible accident, and her sister takes care of her now. That's our cheer block, which was daunting and wonderful. But I remember when we played Kokomo, their cheer block, for one thing, their cheer block was up like about 6 or 7 feet in the air, and they were loud and they were huge, bigger than our group. But I think almost every girl in school was in our cheer block. Cutting down the net. And that's senior prom.
What a hunk.
It's Mike before the hair loss. He transferred it to his chin. We had 178 graduate, and that was the largest senior class to that time. Of course, the next year had even more, but we were double the class of 1954, I believe. And it's an aerial view of the high school before they added on the auditorium and all that, and then they added on even more stuff, so now it's Ivy Tech. And one thing they did when we were in school, which was really neat, that somebody in the journalism class would, it would be their job to gather information from all the seniors, and then it would be posted in the newspaper along with your photograph. And I think I have everybody's from our class in a folder, and it was a way to get to know them a little bit better if you didn't run in the same crowd or whatever. I was a little more verbose than Sandy. We discussed this when you're not in it, but Mike is. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our classmates from 64 are in there. Geneva Kinzer and Sharon Pickrell and First Ward. I don't know. They look like 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade.
We think it's 4th. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that Mike was in kindergarten with us. Yeah,
I did.
I included this picture because, for me, she was one of the most influential teachers that I had. I was scared to death of her because she was old school. That's Catherine Offit. She was the English teacher, and she lived on North 10th Street. And I remember their post office box said Lee P. Offit. I was Leapy. I just thought that was funny. But anyhow, I used a lot of things she taught us in senior lit when I started teaching on my own. Even though I was teaching art, a lot of the things the methods that she used for teaching were really quite advanced. A lot.
Methods, that's the word that everybody ought to know because they don't teach methods anymore.
Well, I don't know. I don't want to go there.
But it's true.
Yeah. And I posted this picture. This was in our yearbook, and it's just a great picture of different people's senior cords. This was homecoming, and Sandy is the girl by the number 10 card.
Hot chick in short shorts up there.
Christy, I think you're on that float too. And who is?
Christy said she was.
Yeah, Christy and Janie Gwen. She's the back here. So yeah, 4 pretty girls. My dad made those cards. They were made out of plywood and painted. Our school nurse. I never had to spend a lot of time there, but they were really nice ladies. That was Sylvia Dorman Baker, who I thought was one of the most elegant people in Noblesville. And this is how Sandy and I met in art class. She's sitting there and I'm standing cutting something out. I think we all tried to get in the picture. But that's when we became friends. I didn't know Sandy real well until senior year. And we hit it off.
Oh, my Lord.
It's Sandy and Lee Gilbert at, what was this?
I think that was a fall wind-up.
Okay.
I remember the dress. I remember the clothes I was wearing in both of these pictures, and when Dottie was talking about proms, I remember them in terms of the dress I wore. I later had a career in fashion, and I probably would be retired if it weren't for my shopping habit today. So that dress was green and had kind of a bell. It was a green brocade, so I think that was a Christmassy.
Christmas dance.
Did we have a Christmas
Yes,
dance?
we had Christmas
Then
dances.
I think that's the Christmas dance.
I think we doubled with that one.
Did we?
And my date walked off.
Did you like my dress?
Yes. He walked out, remember?
Who was your date?
Someone else. He was from a hotel. Blake something. That's a long time ago.
I only remember the dress.
This is our principal and vice principal, and I think we were really lucky. They were both just wonderful people. Mr. LeCount was the vice principal, and he always kind of scared me a little bit. He was gruff on the outside, but really he was a softie. And can't even think of his name now. Yeah, I always called him the happy, smiling turtle, because he just was such a positive person, and just, well, how are you? Yeah.
Remember his shoes?
What were they?
It took me 30 years to realize it, and I cornered his son one time. I said, "Your dad bought those shoes on purpose." You could hear him coming from 2 halls away. He didn't want to catch anybody. His shoes squeaked on that terrazzo floor, and his son said, "Yeah." He said, "Sometimes it took him a long time to find who was selling those." He said he always bought those so you could hear him coming, and everybody clear out before he.
That's funny.
Sandy, one of the things that I kept, whichever one you are, I heard in later years that the classes did not respect Mr. Wolf like we did. The other classes did not respect Mr. Wolf, and they made fun of him, and that really hurt because I was.
Yeah, he was a really nice man.
He was. But I think it shows the difference in time, even 4 or 5 years after we were there.
Mm-hmm.
My brother, who unfortunately is in the hospital right now, graduated in '61, and day before yesterday I was visiting him, and we got to talking about high school, and he was talking about the principal before, how no one liked him, and he was a terrible, he was really hard on the kids and a strict disciplinarian, and how much they liked Maynard Wolf when he came in.
He was fair.
And he was kind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is a picture of our class officers. And, in your proms, your class officers are supposed to lead your class reunions and all that stuff. But none of ours ever came back except for Joan. And she came back much later. And so that's why, you know, we just, whoever was in town helped with the class reunion.
You like that little flip on the side of my hair? Pretty sure it was stylish at that time.
And my bubble haircut.
It was pretty much standard issue.
Yeah. This is when we beat Carmel, I believe. So pretty exciting. And I took this picture. I wanted the Forest Park Inn to show because so many of the girls in all the classes worked at the Forest Park Inn for Bob and Jane Crook. And it was a good way to make money for kids, you know, jobs and so forth. I never got to work there, but because you had to have a way to get there. I didn't have that. So, and the Diana, I miss the Diana. I wish they hadn't torn it down. There was nothing wrong with that building.
Drive to Tipton.
Yeah, I do. We go to Tipton quite frequently. Yeah?
Does anyone know what year they did away with the Logan Theater?
It had to be while we were still in school, because I remember when we used to have the junior high basketball tourneys at the, thank you. We would have a break in between to go to lunch, and a lot of kids went to the movie theaters. And I remember going to the Logan, at least when I was in the 8th grade, to see The Claw at the Logan. And I don't remember it being there when we were in high school.
It was next to the grocery store. Yeah.
Where the Linden Street.
It closed probably like 50.
Yeah, 59. It had to be 59 because that's when I saw that movie. So, and I put this picture of the Charberg in because that's when we started venturing outside of our territory. Now, a lot of people, you know, on dates, special dates, would maybe go to the teepee down in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. That was a big deal. And but otherwise, we just stayed in town and went to Ramsey's, and then when they built Jim Dandy when we were seniors. And a lot of people used to go to Wimpy's, which was inside the Diana Theater. Well, it's in the same building, is what I'm saying. And there used to be like a pass-through. Do you remember that? There was a pass-through from Wimpy's into the lobby. So.
Well, Bill's Drive-In, too.
Yes, Bill's Drive-In. Loved their breaded tenderloins. But Ramsey's had the best French fries.
Where was Bill's Drive-In?
It was out on North 10th, just before you turned into the bowling alley, which isn't a bowling alley anymore. I don't know what it is.
It's the Eagles now.
Oh, yeah, okay, it's the Eagles building now. It was Bill's Drive-In, and then it was Nan and Spike's for a long time. Spike and Nan. Thank you for correcting. See, I told you if I live long enough, it's going to be.
That was the cruising route. When you were just killing time driving around town, you go from Ramsey's to Bill's to the Jim Dandy to Ramsey's to Bill's.
And then you could add in Charberg.
Yeah.
The Rainbow, I never went to the restaurant at the Rainbow except when we went skating. And yeah, they did. I remember going there a couple of times. But that was in Cicero. On 19.
My brother Tom and I rented big tenderloins for those.
Did you?
But your brother was with you, were doing no good.
Remembering. The first time I met Dottie was in the Diana Theater, and she introduced me to the other girls. This is Tom's brother, which kind of became who I was for the next 4 or 5 years. Tom's brother.
I'm sorry, Tim.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments that you'd like to make? This microphone is not on the PA, but this microphone is what is being recorded on the TV, so that's why you can't hear yourself. Here we go.
I just want to say that I drove a mail truck across Potter's Bridge, but my father-in-law drove a school bus across before that.
I remember hearing kids who were on the school bus, they were talking about how they were a little bit scared. And I remember driving over it, and all those boards would flip up as you drove across it. Not me, I liked it. And when they reopened it, they did have a horse and buggy, and you could ride across it on the horse and buggy.
The test of skill was to ride on the center rail.
Yes. And walk on it. I can still walk on that center rail without falling. What?
Didn't it used to go from Noblesville to another town? Riverwood, yes. Yeah.
What? Potter's Bridge?
Yeah.
No. No. You had to go out 37 to get to Potter's Bridge. I mean, 37 to get to Strawtown. I can't. Well, yeah, you could. You're right. 37 was about 1955. Yeah, I remember watching them cutting the street through. Cutting the road through. Come in town. Didn't mention Wheaton's Drive-In. That was a little before our time, but they had frozen custard that was really good.
Yep.
Wheaton's, it was on South 10th. There was an A&W on South 10th, too.
That was before high school time, but it was childhood. That was our
Right.
favorite place. And
Right.
it was before Dairy Queen.
Hi, Dottie. For those of us who are not from here, what was the setting of the high school? What was around it, or how did it appear when you graduated?
Well, it was fairly new. That part was still part of the Goshaw farm, I believe, and when it was, started to be built there. And some of the homes on East Clinton, those were newer. There was kind of some newer homes there. And to the other side of the high school, maybe that's Monument? No, not that far. But that section of houses near the cemetery and the high school, those were all built in the late, early 50s.
And what was on the other side of, on the east side?
Cornfield. The cornfield was on Cumberland, but yeah, it was still really rural farmland. Yeah, the ABC drive-in, but that didn't come in until the late 50s. I remember people say, "Oh, they're going to have fireworks at the drive-in theater. They're just trying to compete with the town." I know I read in the paper recently that they didn't have usual fireworks until they started this one at the high school, but that's not true, because they had fireworks at the park every year. And you would try to get into the park, or at least park along the highway, and it was wonderful. You'd sit up on the hill and watch it all. And
Forest Park?
Forest Park, mm-hmm. Well, that was the park.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Alice has a question.
I have a question. Can you guys hear me okay? I wanted to know if you would talk a little bit. You spoke about not being able to work at Forest Park Inn because it was too far and you didn't have a vehicle. But I wondered if Sandy and Dottie, if you could both tell us a little bit about if you had any jobs in high school and what that was like.
Babysitting.
Yeah, babysitting. 25 cents an hour.
Bill's Drive-In.
The hospital.
Mr. Ed.
How much do you get an hour, Christy?
I didn't know. I don't know. I spent it on clothes.
So it was just layaway.
Favorite place to shop.
Blue Ribbon Jewelry.
How much did you get paid?
I don't know, Dottie. I don't.
You worked at the A&P?
I spoke gas.
Yeah.
Standard grocery.
Ooh.
Where was the Standard Grocery located?
East Connor.
East Connor.
Kind of where the, what is it? There's a gun shop and, yeah, that was a Standard Grocery. There was a Danner's there too. It was nice.
National Bank had a branch there too.
Did kids have cars? Did high schoolers have cars?
A few did. A few did.
You had a. Didn't you have an old car? No.
No, a few did. I know Tony always hung out with the older guys so he could ride around.
Lee Gilbert had a motor scooter.
You had a 57 Ford? But when did you get that 57 Ford? Okay. Of course, we couldn't park them at the school, could we? Well, I never drove. I rode the school bus to town.
Was there any public transportation?
No.
There was
there
a
were
bus that went to Indianapolis.
There was?
Yeah, there was a bus that you could pick. There was a bus station somewhere around Beanies, I think. And there was you could take a bus to Indianapolis.
We're Roland's.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, that was the traction station for the interurban, too. So, Roland's. No, but I just knew where it was.
And the Dart Cab Company in 1963 or 4 because they bought 3 brand new Dodge Darts and they called it the Dart Cab Company.
They had the ABC bus lines. I think they were from Sheridan to Noblesville. I know that Sylvia Baker, her husband, was an artist for Blocks, and he rode the bus to Blocks every day the whole time he worked. And he also had only one arm. He lost an arm in World War II. And so she always drove.
We live in Sylvia Baker's house, and we still have some of his art that was in our house when we bought it.
Oh, you're lucky.
Yeah. Carol.
Okay, I graduated in 1949, and talking about the cars, there was one junior boy that had a car and one senior boy that had a car, and that was it.
And they were popular, I'll bet.
I talked to Ruth Teeter, she was a Musselman, and she just died a couple of years ago, and she was 99 when she died. And I was just asking her stories about school and so forth, and she was telling me that she and her Wayne Musselman was her brother, and their parents had 2 cars, one for the kids to go to school, and that was pretty wealthy, I think. And then they had their own car, and so her brother drove her into school, and this was the old high school that's where your junior high was, and then it was the Boys and Girls Club, and now it's owned by Culver's. But anyhow, she came to school, and they called her to the office, and they said, Wayne has appendicitis, and he's going to have his appendix removed. And they'd taken him to the Harrell Hospital, which was on 9th Street. And her mother came over to see her, and she said, "You're going to have to drive the car home." And she didn't know how to drive. And of course, it was a shift. And so she said, "I don't know how I ever got home." She said, "I went the whole way going, because she never got it into another gear." But she made it home, and then her dad tried to teach her how to drive, and he got so fed up with her, I think her grandmother ended up teaching her how to drive. So, but anyhow, I thought that was funny. I'd never heard that story. And I know that my parents all went to Noblesville High School, and they had to ride with somebody. There was no bus transportation. So that's why a lot of farm people just quit in the 8th grade at that time.
My grandpa Ralph Fisher, all livestock farmers in the county.
Wow.
On the weekends.
Can you do it on a microphone? Sorry. For the recording. Start over.
My grandfather, Ralph Fisher, hauled livestock for farmers around the county to the stockyards in Indianapolis. And on the weekends, he would take the sides, turn them down on his stock truck, and put clean bales of straw in there and haul the ball teams to ball games.
Really? Huh, that's interesting.
I have another question. Did you guys, I graduated in 1981, and I rode the bus every day until I graduated, just because my parents wouldn't let me drive, because my older sister wrecked the car. Whatever. Anyway, logic. My question is, like, did you guys do a senior, like after graduation, like when in 1981, a bunch of senior friends would like go on a trip, you know, to, oh, what's that place in Cincinnati that, you know, the
Kings
Island. I wasn't allowed to go, but I just wondered if you guys did anything like that. And then my husband has a follow-up question.
Yeah, prom, that was always at prom time, and it was a big deal. You would go to the prom, and then afterwards, now sometimes they had activities for the kids to do, and sometimes they didn't. I remember one year they had the old Elks open, which is now part of the city park, by the city building parking lot, and they had bowling, and they had dance contests and food. Well, I don't remember that, but maybe they did. Not at the Elks, they didn't. No, oh, I know, but I'm just saying I just remembered this one particular one at the Elks Club. So there were activities, and then the next day you would go to a state park or someplace and have a picnic. And I know Mike and I we went to the after activities our senior year and went to the dunes and had a really wonderful day. And so I don't know, where did you go?
Mound State Park, and nearly got shot. My boyfriend was kind of said something smart to a passing gang, and they happened to have a gun with them. So it took a while to talk ourselves out of that. So that's all I remember about that excursion. We lived.
Well, Lee Gilbert always did have a smart mouth.
Yeah, exactly. He made some comment and to the wrong person.
He should have been a stand-up comedian. He would have been somebody like, I don't know, can't think of that guy's name that was so abrasive, but he was funny. He was a very clever person.
So when this first started, or when you guys first started talking, you said you could get a sundae for $0.25. What is a black and white sundae?
It was like a big dip of vanilla ice cream, and then you got hot fudge and marshmallow on it, and that was it. You know, it's just like one big dip. And
Do you remember that when we were in school, we always had to wear dresses? We could not. During the winter, when we walked to school, we had to wear slacks under our dresses and then take them off when we got to school.
Yeah, I remember in grade school we had what they called leggings. It's not that much difference than what they have today, except they were made out of wool, and you had to zip the ankles and button up here, and you had straps, and it was hard to handle a dress and that and keep your dignity in the cloak closet. So, and they got passed down from cousin to cousin to cousin because it was cold, and there wasn't much heat on the buses back then.
I think we were allowed to wear jeans and pants because one of my fashion memories, a very traumatic one, is in the second grade picture. I forgot that there were pictures that day, and I dressed myself, and I couldn't find anything to wear except this little pair of red jeans that I had knelt in the front yard playing with chickens and had chicken poop on them. I thought, oh, nobody will notice. And then I went to school, and it was picture day. And I have pigtails in that picture because my mother would have, I had long hair, and she would have curled my hair and put a pretty dress on me. So that's how I know we were allowed to wear pants.
We weren't. Sometimes you could wear slacks under your skirts if you were going out on the playground. Because, if you're on the swing, the boys might look up your skirt, So.
Well, that was that was first ward. So definitely I had red jeans on. But I do know that our mothers, if it was cold and we had a dress on, they'd make us wear pants underneath, and you never wanted to because
It's uncomfortable.
Baby, that's for babies.
Dottie, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the, you've got on the easel here, you've got some postcards of paintings.
Yeah, I always get a little bit annoyed when I have to go down to the city building and try to save something that they seem to always want to tear down. And I said, when they wanted to take something else away, I said, I don't want to have one more landmark that we have to celebrate in absentia, you know, gone. So, but I appreciate Brad Cook and Rodney Reveal doing all the paintings that they've done of Noblesville, how it used to look. And, you know, so I've enjoyed the downtown areas and how the drugstore. And I don't know if you know, but that wasn't the first corner drugstore. There was a bigger one, 3 stories, but it was unsafe, so they tore it down, and then they built the one that is there now. And of course, we've probably lost our train forever. This building is now the Antique Mall, but that was always Western Auto, and that was like a wonderful place to go. You could buy just about anything you needed at Western Auto. You could buy records, you could buy bicycles, you could buy tools, you could buy tires, just anything you wanted.
You could go in and listen to records after.
Yeah, which I did a lot.
On the weekends, they just let you go through them, and they have records.
And play them, yeah. Hot platters. This is Noblesville Furniture Company. When that was 3 other stores that they covered up, and it was a fabulous furniture store. Vin Hagen ran that, and he just really knew how to do things.
Did your class get the little cedar chest?
Yes, yes, I have mine still. Emily, didn't you get one, a cedar chest, when you graduated? I thought you did. They used to give you a senior key, and you would get a little cedar chest, Lane cedar chest from the furniture store.
I would just like to insert that I worked with Lucy Lane at Bloomingdale's in the furniture department. We were both apprenticing in the furniture department, so the heir to the Lane, I thanked her for my cedar chest.
The old library, which was such a beautiful place. I loved to go in there. And you would go in the front. The steps were in the front, and it was just had the smell of an old, wonderful building. And so they lobbied and got the city building built there. And it is nice, but it's just not what it once was. Neither is the library. You're right. You're right. And I've got 2 pictures of the Santa House here. I think this was Santa House 2, and this is Santa House 3. Santa House 1 my father built, and I don't have a picture of it on here. The second one, my father and I did a mural inside for it. And that's been a nice addition to our square all these years. People come from everywhere just to take their children to see Santa there. That's just a beautiful overview that Rodney did of the old jail and the courthouse. And I will say, if it weren't for Noblesville Preservation Alliance and the Historical Society, that courthouse wouldn't be here because they wanted to tear it down. And what? For parking, yeah. And we fought and fought for that. In fact, NPA and the Historical Society hired architects. We hired a professor from Ball State, Professor Herman, I think his name was, and he did a presentation. He wrote the book about the 92 courthouses in Indiana, and about what a loss it would be to lose the centerpiece of your town, and that the sheriff's residence was the little jewel box there.
When was that they wanted to tear it down?
The late 80s, because it was in 1992 that they built the new judicial center, and they restored the outside of the old jail and they did a beautiful job. But it's like they won't listen to people who live here. They'll only listen to outside influences. Yeah.
Has it changed today?
No, it hasn't. This is the block that's gone. It's part of the Judicial Center where the club bar was. And this building that was on the end was a beautiful building. It's a shame to miss that. That was Avery's Barber Shop, I believe. The Rainbow, of course. We all loved the Rainbow and I spent a lot of time there. I don't know about you, but I loved skating. And then Clancy's was... Initially, I didn't like Clancy's because they tore down 2 beautiful houses for Clancy's, and then the city buys it and tears down our Clancy's. And we drove over to the one in Sydney, Ohio, a couple summers ago just to feel like we were in a real Clancy store. And I'm glad to have the Grindstone back in town. Grandpa's Candy, the building's still there, but of course, you can't buy candy there anymore, and that was the best thing, because right across the street was the football field, and you could leave at halftime and go get all that good homemade candy and popcorn.
Where was the football field?
At North Elementary. That was the back side of it. Part of the field is still there. I think the track is still there. Reps Flowers. Just a kind of a coincidence. My dad's family were the Zeisses. And Dad said he was always a newcomer. They came in the 1880s, and they were newcomers to the county. We're a little more provincial then. But the reps were on the same train from Tiffin, Ohio, that our family was on, which was interesting to me. That's the old airport, which is now a shopping center where Meijer and Lowe's and all that is. And Don Roberts ran that. And then he moved it out onto Promise Road, and it's still going, I think. And the train station, I barely remember the train station, but it was on South 9th, 8th, South 8th. And Rodney did this wonderful painting of it. And the Logan Street Bridge, when it was an iron bridge, I don't know about you, but I remember riding over it to go right out to the park to go to the pool. And it was so scary. You thought you were going to just fall over. It was really scary. But that bridge was the original. I mean, they just sort of added a top to it, but that had been a covered bridge until 1913 when we had the huge floods all across the middle U.S., and it washed that bridge out. But they just used the same... Thank you. I can't think of the word I'm wanting to. And the Blue Ribbon Dairy, everybody loved that. Everybody had their personal favorites, but mine was always the Black Raspberry Ripple. I've never had any as good. I mean, you can't find it anywhere because it was all. Yes, it was on 19. Well, it's on Logan Street. Logan Street extension goes right through where Blue Ribbon Dairy was. And Bobby Weinshank, who was in our class, he designed that sign, and they put it up the 3 scoops or 2 scoops. This is Federal Hill School, which is still standing. It's an insurance agency. My dad went there to school. I think, Marcia, you went there to school. Did you go there, Janice? Okay. And then they made it, they called it the special needs.
That's where Karen went.
But I'm glad it's still standing. This one I just included because I had that picture. That's a beautiful barn over on 31, kind of in Westfield, and I think it's still there. Oh, I love that barn. It's got a field stone. Well, that's true. Our Lady of Grace. I didn't mention that. Tony went there. Christy. You didn't go there, Christy?
No. I came in 7th grade.
Oh.
It was tough being a Catholic back.
Well, I know that the Catholics earlier, before they built Our Lady of Grace and everything, had to go to Cicero, to the Catholic Church there. Had to take the interurban.
Well, we had the silver shirts here, and the Catholics had to cross the street when people were coming towards them.
I know, I've heard of the silver shirts. That had something to do with...
Pearson's grandfather, great-grandfather was the Lucky Book.
Well, that's a whole other story. So we'll have to do that at some time. So the Silvershires were, I don't think they were in Noblesville. He didn't come here until after he was in prison at Terre Haute anyhow. So Billy Pearson's grandfather. He was...
I'm not sure how far back.
No, he was his grandfather. Anyhow, he was accused of sedition and spent some time at Terre Haute prison. The Forest Park, we all love Forest Park, sliding down the hills there. And
You have pop guns or something in the Forest Park?
the arcade, they were 22s. And nobody thought anything of it. I mean, you wouldn't think of pointing a gun at anybody, anything other than the target.
Those still exist. There's a collector who has them. So they could come back, but I don't think they're likely to.
Yeah. And it was fun. Yeah, that arcade, I wish they had saved it. It was really neat.
And does everyone know that that was originally private property that was donated? I believe it was donated.
Yeah, it was donated. No, I think it was bought by the city from, they called him Pop Brown. And I think he is some relation to the Comstock family, I thought. I might be wrong about that.
Is it Noblesville Neighbors that has the site on Facebook of all the pictures with Forest Park, or is it a different post, different? They have a lot, web pages. There's a lot of pictures.
Mm-hmm. I think it's that if you might be from Noblesville, if that's where they've got a lot of photographs that are really neat. The Rainbow at Night and the drive-in theater. And I've heard a lot of stories about people sneaking in trunks. I wouldn't know anything about that.
I would.
I would too. And the Diana, which we all loved. I will say that, we're not talking about the civil rights years or anything, but I do know that at the theater before our time, that the black people were supposed to go upstairs. But then the upstairs became unsafe, so they just, sat downstairs. Nobody. Yeah. Was it? I didn't know that. I've heard about that later. So I also know that at the swimming pool when I was a little kid, you couldn't, if you were black, you only could go on Tuesday and Thursdays or something. Ridiculous.
Tuesday, I think just Tuesday.
Well, then a group of gentlemen, including Murphy White and several people, protested that, and they did away with that, which it should have never been an issue anyhow. But
I don't think they ever officially did away with it. I think things just changed. People began to go, but the city never gave on that.
When they protested it, the city offered them 3 days, and they said, "We're taxpayers. We want every day to be available to us." And so what eventually happened when we were, I asked a friend whose family operated the concession recently, Dave Kitterman, and he said it was Tuesday, and it wasn't even exclusive to the African Americans, that anybody could come, but it was just 1 day. So it went from 3 days to 1 day, and then somehow, hopefully, somebody came to their senses and it just dissolved.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what actually is going to be a topic of a future Noblestories, so I'll just let you know we're already working on some future programs, and growing up black in Noblesville is going to be.
Yeah, we should cover that.
And that's when you get the older folks with the real wisdom. So stay tuned.
Sandy, or Dottie, when you were going through those pictures, it reminded me of the kids that did dam sliding. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, Sandy and I did that. It was a lot of fun. We didn't have a tray. We used a beach towel.
You sit on a towel, and the last time Dottie and I did it, we were already in college, and for old time's sake, we went down the dam, and there was some kind of horrible larva, and when we got to the bottom, we were covered with larvae inside our ears, and
I don't remember it being
other
that bad.
places I won't describe, but no, it was horrible.
We never went back.
That was the last trip down the dam. Maybe a little later today.
Yeah, I know that in the summer, I know you were there, Tony. We would go out to the Morris Reservoir, and the place where the beach is now, we would hang out there and swim. We'd say, surf's up, and everybody'd go over there, but you had to wear your tennis shoes because there were so many broken beer bottles in the water at that time. Was it? Okay. Yeah, some things never change.
I don't know about the larva at the dam. I don't know about that. Hopefully that changes.
I remember it's kind of sickened. It was the ew factor.
Any other questions? Comments?
Would you talk about the way the gymnasium was decorated for the prom? I think it was probably done that way when you were in.
Oh, yeah, we did. We just kind of touched on that. You would have your sponsor, and they would wire the gym all around the dance floor, and we would hang crepe paper, like clear down to the floor. It was and it became like a wall, and then the tables were decorated, and you would have your central theme, which ours was Stranger in Paradise. So we had a special entrance where you went over a bridge, and it was over a pond, and we had lots of fake flowers and foliage and so forth. And that's where we had pictures taken. I remember Stairway to the Sea, they had a special room for it where they had fishing nets and so forth. And yeah, my dad built the stairs for Stairway to the Stars, which went from the gym up to the upper gym. And it was huge, and I mean, it was really impressive.
But that was the prom after hours, the one
right?
We did, and the one we built was incredible, truly. I mean, it was very beautiful, and I remember being extremely disappointed at it was a great stairway, but that was pretty much it.
The next one, you mean?
Yeah, mm-hmm. It was. They put all their efforts into that stairway, which was sort of fun.
In my many years as being prom sponsor, several times I tried to bring it back to the high school, but it would have cost 5 or 6 times what we had money to pay for it. And I don't understand why it would have taken so much, but that's, I said, okay, here's our gym, we're going to do this, 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 and this, and they'd say, okay, you're going to need this, 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 and this, and that comes too. So we never got to move it back. But I tried.
Well, it was really amazing, and I looking back, I've thought so often what wonderful teachers we had to be part of all that and do the planning, and I mean, it took a lot of their time.
Well, and Mr. Nakar and Mrs. Swank did it for several years until Mr. Nakar died, and then
Mr. Dellinger.
Well, no, I think it was Mr. Watson before that, and then they got Mr. Dellinger in.
Mr. Dellinger did all the ones I was involved with. So.
Yep. But we tried.
I had no idea you were in the gym when you were there.
No, the whole atmosphere changed. It was kind of like.
Thought you were in paradise.
You did. You did think you were in paradise. Did we have like a week to do it? Yeah, it was like a week.
Another question here.
What more a comment, you were talking about Mrs. Offutt. I was in the class of 1970, and I can remember we so admired her and Mr. Wolf, and we used to say if you had those two in the same room, you had access to every piece of knowledge that was worth knowing.
Yeah, Mr. Wolf was a big influence on my older brother, and he's the one that encouraged him to go to Purdue and study chemical engineering, and told him to go into silicones. That was the coming thing, and he did, and my brother had a wonderful career, and it's because of Mr. Wolf. We had some wonderful teachers. It was a small school. you know, but I remember we had a huge controversy because we had a student teacher named Mr. Potts, and he encouraged the kids to read Catcher in the Rye. And oh my gosh, the sheriff came, not the sheriff, the chief of police, Horn, confiscated the books, and no, it was all over the paper. You know, it's kind of embarrassing, you know. Yeah.
Didn't we have to have a written permission from our parents to read it?
Yeah.
I went to Ball State and bought it.
That's a great way to get people to read, ban it.
Well, here we are, an hour and 15 minutes into it, and I found this fascinating, and I thank all of you for participating and coming today. And thank you. Let's give a hand for Sandy and Dottie for reminiscing with us here today. Thank you both so much.
I'd like to say something about the NPA, if I may. Dottie mentioned that because of the Preservation Alliance, we still have our courthouse and our jail. And I think a lot of the charm and the beauty of this city is due to the preservation efforts of the Preservation Alliance. While many things have been lost, a lot of things have been saved. And I think when you drive around and you see the beautiful historic homes that have been, they're obviously loved and fixed up. And now we've had two of the major homes revert back to single family and are being fixed up. So that's so I'd like to give a little advertisement for September 15th will be the historic home tour, and we're doing something kind of special this year. We're trying to recreate a celebration that occurred in 1923 for the centennial when Logan Street was closed and there was a community pitch-in and all sorts of entertainment on the street. So most of our homes are on Logan Street or nearby. The city has consented to close the street between 12th and 15th. And we'll have food service, lots of music. The sanctuary here will be having entertainment, music, perhaps poetry readings, but there will be entertainment all day at the Logan Street Sanctuary. Music and entertainers all over the street. So you can go on the Noblesville Preservation Alliance.org to buy your tickets. Please do.
Thank you, Sandy. I will also just let you know that our next Noble Stories segment is going to be a month after that on October 14th. And we will be holding that at Bob Arbuckle's Railroad Place. It will feature him. It is the occasion of his 96th birthday, and he's really looking forward to it, and so are we. So be sure to mark your calendars for that. Again, it'll be a Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock. And I also want to give a little plug to an event that's actually going on this afternoon. Hopefully the storms will pass. And at 6:30 today, at Federal Hill Commons, the park where they're holding the annual band concert series. Tonight, they're going to name the band concert series the Mary Wrestler Memorial Band Concert Series in Mary's name. She created it and ran that for 20 years and just died here within the past year or so. And so they're going to officially name it the Mary Wrestler Memorial. So we're going to have a little ceremony there at 6:30. I encourage you to all come. The Lions will be there serving burgers and brats, and so be sure to partake of that as well. So we'll take care of your social calendar here for today.
The Historical Society has a neat event coming up too. I think it's September 16th. It's right after the home tour, out at the Crownland Cemetery where the Civil War monument is. They're gonna. This is the 150th year. Yeah, and so there's going to be quite a celebration of that, and I'd love for you to come. We're going to have, I think, a Lincoln reenactor and just honor the sacrifices made by a lot of our forebears. So. Hope you can come. Yeah, there's a lot of veterans groups that are going to be in it and some scout groups.
I announce an event?
Sure.
There's a series of events taking place this coming week at Conner Prairie related to Frederick Douglass's bicentennial. He would have been 200 years old this year. And there's an event Wednesday night on the 18th where the third great grandson of Frederick Douglass will be at Conner Prairie. And he will be talking about his 1 million abolitionist project. And there will be a reading of a play written by this lady sitting next to me, Celeste Williams. It's called More Light, Douglass Returns. It is a play about Frederick Douglass's visit to Noblesville in 1880, and it weaves the Robert Settlement story into that visit. There will be performances on, there's one tonight at 7 o'clock. There's another one on Thursday at 7 o'clock at Conner Prairie. There's one Saturday at 3 o'clock at Conner Prairie, and then next Sunday night at 7 o'clock will be the final performance. There's a flyer back here on the desk, so if any of you would like to come, we'd love to see you there.
We saw just a small excerpt from the play at the courthouse recently, and it's absolutely brilliant and mesmerizing. So I definitely encourage you to go.
And that great-great-great-grandson of Frederick Douglass, he's also the great-great-grandson of Booker T. Washington. So he is like royalty.
So that's Noble Stories for this production. Thank you so much for coming, and we're hoping to see you in the future. Thanks.